Welcome to Staples.
Staples guy, I just got to town and I need a presentation printed for a big meeting tomorrow.
Well, Staples has everything you need to print, scan, and fax.
Great. Oh, just got a text. The home office made changes to the presentation.
No problem. You can access your files from a USB, email, or the cloud.
And the meeting isn't tomorrow, now it's today.
Our machines are self-service, so there's no waiting.
And it's not here. Now it's in Ebensburg.
I hear it's lovely this time of year.
Print, scan, fax, and copy at Staples, your office away from home.
There's something outside.
What is that?
Radio.
Good Sunday afternoon, evening, Monster X Radio listeners. Monster X Radio is brought to you by, as always, by the Sasquatch Coffee Company. Sasquatch Coffee, have you tried it yeti? Go check it out at www.squatchcoffee.com. With me today is my good friend and Squatch recent relocation to Washington, Shane Hardcore Corson. Shane, how are you?
Doing well, kind of doing well, man. I do. You trust me. Doing well, thanks.
Yeah, we got actually some really nice weather this weekend. It's quite a change from last week when we had a little bit of hail and rain and snow. Today it's about 63 degrees on the Oregon coast, so Squatch season is kicking off.
Hey, it's time to get out there. It's really nice up here in Washington as well, and compared to last week where we had a couple inches of snow, I did manage to get out and do a little bit of hiking, but this weather is much more my sort of weather. So yeah, time to get out, do some hiking, do some camping, and get out there and do what we love to do.
We were talking before we came on air, and it seems like this time of year, and we were talking about last year, the same thing is that we're seeing in reports. There were some interesting reports last year that came out of, about this time. And obviously people, and we've had some unusually harsh weather for Oregon, and the Coast Range had quite a bit of snow on it at different times this year. We're having above average snowpack. They've been talking about. We've been having almost drought conditions the last couple summers, even out on the coast. But this year I think we're going to be in better shape. I know that Mount Hood has gotten, the Cascades have gotten more snow than they have gotten in the last few years. So I think, and on the Coast Range particularly, I think it reduces the amount of human activity. We're not out there as much when there's that much snow. It just makes it difficult to get around, and the roads up there are not conducive to, safe travel. So
right, yeah,
it's interesting that we're starting to see people are getting out more and moving around and we're getting, more, all of a sudden more reports of activity, which is interesting. Of course, it takes two things.
Exactly.
It takes two things to have a Bigfoot encounter. It takes a Bigfoot and a person. So that obviously if there's less people out, and we've seen that. When you look at the data, weather has a huge effect, and human activity in the woods and stuff, times of years, but that obviously just makes common sense. So
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the weather over the years long enough, you can maybe see some trends there, or lack of trend, maybe some predictability, at least when it comes to some of these sightings. And from California up the West Coast here, we got a ton of rain. I mean, California is now officially out of a drought, and then you got all the rain up the coast, and now you're with the weather taming down a bit and getting a little nicer. You're starting to see people out there, obviously, and of course, like you said, it takes a Sasquatch and a person for a report. I think with the amount of deadfall that's been out there, a lot of the snags are coming down. People are, park services are and when they're starting to get out there and clear this stuff up, and now of course, some of these roads that were unpassable are now passable. You're starting to get, fluctuation of reports, and then, I guess it really stands to reason. I would say, from what I'm seeing so far, the reports are up this year compared to last year at this same time. Though there were a few good ones last year. Seems to be a little bit more reports up the Pacific Northwest area, at least, compared to last year. Minimal, but still a few more reports compared to last year.
Well, and you're never talking about hundreds of reports. It's sample.
No.
It's handful. You're talking about maybe dozens of reports if it's a busy squat season. And that's another factor you were talking about. We had a lot of wind this year, and last week when I went out with Susan and we're going into an area that has a history of Bigfoot reports. We went down one of the side roads up there, and I actually was walking out in front of the pickup, throwing stuff out of the way so we could keep going, because it was just, trees and rock slides and once as we get this time of year, and like you said, the Forest Service has a lot of work to do to go clear out areas that are. First, I'm sure they're doing the places that people go to most often. The thought crosses my mind is when do Bigfoot let their guard down, get a little less guarded when they haven't seen people in particular areas for months or a week. They don't see their sightings of people is down, so they are a little bit more apt to move around more freely, especially if we've had, like I said, a lot of the roads and stuff have not been even accessible. I know that we couldn't get into our research area for a good part of the winter just because there was too much snow.
Yeah, it's brutal.
So with us today is a gentleman from my home state of Oregon, David Boozer, and David is the host and curator of Pacwest Bigfoot. And today I'd like to invite our guest, Mr. David Boozer of Pacwest Bigfoot, to join us. Good afternoon, David.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. How are you today?
Awesome.
Great.
Actually, to all those guys who left some questions on my YouTube channel about what flavors are best with the Sasquatch Coffee Company, my favorites are Tree Knock and Steven.
Well, that's important too. So, and I know. I mean, it's funny because I know I recognize you. You've been a customer of Sasquatch Coffee for quite a while, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I end up ordering every couple months or something.
So, with me also is Shane. So, we'd like to welcome you to Monster X Radio. And to start out, can you, for our Monster X listeners, describe yourself a little bit and your background, how you got interested in the subject of Bigfoot?
Oh, yeah. My name's David Boozer. I was raised here in southern Oregon area around Ashland. I live in Roseburg today. I have 5 kids. I work from home as a online marketing consultant and SEO specialist for companies and entrepreneurs alike. And I like to do a lot of blogging, and that's really it for my business life. It's actually pretty simple. I guess you would say the interest in Bigfoot happened, I'm from the Pacific Northwest. It's just something that you hear about and when you're growing up, and I did. But it was never really that real for me until one Christmas. I was about 13, I think I was 13, somewhere right around there, 13, 14. And we lived out in a place called Rogue River, Oregon. And we lived in between, we lived way out there. We lived out past the high school there, about good 7 miles out East Evans Creek Road. And me and my parents and my sister and brother at the time, we decided to go out and get our Christmas tree a couple weeks before Christmas, and we ended up at a place called Elderberry Flat. And it was interesting, man, because it had snowed the night before. And but that day itself was pretty clear. There was hardly a cloud in the sky. It was a beautiful day, a beautiful morning. And we pulled off onto this like kind of logging road, and it had a kind of a wide open kind of turnaround area, I guess, for trucks or whatnot, a little kind of like a little tiny creek kind of thing running through it. And me and my mom decided to go kind of up the logging road up around the mountainside there ourselves to kind of go looking for a Christmas tree, because we were Christmas freaks. So, while my mom and brother and sister were, or my dad, my brother, and my sister were over, throwing snowballs and stuff at each other or whatever. We got up there about, a good 65, 75 yards up that road, and we went off the road just a little bit, and then we started coming back because we were like, we don't want to get too far out here. And we started coming back, and my mom's like, hey, Dave, look at this. And it came out of the woods, apparently, about kind of at an angle, not too much of an angle, but not a straight line, straight shot to the road and down. But it came out from kind of an angle and arced over to the road, and then it went straight down to the creek, and it came back up. But it was a set of footprints with actual toes in them. And these things I remember stretching, and I was doing the splits at the time, trying to get from one foot to the other foot with mine. And looking back, I can almost guarantee that these footprints, I know at the time they were like, I'm a small guy. Even today, I'm like 2 inches shy of a disability check. But I'm telling you, these things were still like twice, 2.5 times the size of my own foot at the time. And so I'm kind of guesstimating, around 16, 17 inches, but that's what it had to be. And they're not kind of slightly cockeyed like, human beings kind of shuffle in their steps, side to side, going down. These things were right in front of each other. I remember everything that day. My mom, actually, this is when she came to believe that Bigfoot really did exist, because about 6 or 7 years before that, when I was even younger, we were camping at a place called Hyatt Lake. There's a little place called Little Hyatt. And her and other campers in that area, on a few occasions, heard screams, like these blood-curdling, like crazy guttural screams coming from a few miles back that way. And this just kind of like, just kind of threw it over the top. I mean, this was it for her. For me, I just found it absolutely amazing. But, like I said, I was 13, 14 years old. I was getting into high school. Girls were out and about. I soon forgot about it. About 20 years later, and about 2 to 3 miles down the road from that same exact spot, I didn't see it, and neither did my buddy or his wife. But what we experienced was absolutely insane. Now, I know what bear are. I know how cougar deal. I've lived in the mountains here. I've lived in the woods here. I'm from Southern Oregon, and I've actually worked with and volunteered for almost a year at a place called Wildlife Images in Southern Oregon. So I've worked with bear. So I know what bear tracks look like, and I know what they sound like then when they're running around, tussling around, or whatever. Whatever it was that night, and I'll kind of make it long story short, we were camping in this little area, and there was a lot of, like, that small river rock that you get around these larger creeks and stuff. Mm-hmm. it was that and kind of the sand mixed into it. But we were at camp there, and it was, it was late at night. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere right around there, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was late. All of a sudden, their daughter, she's like 2 at the time, just sat up screaming her head off. Just this huge scream. And all of a sudden, me and Mike's wife actually sat up, and what we heard was, right before that, right when she was like screaming, we heard, it was like this like really heavy sniff, like a, this like just deep snip, and she screams as this snipping is happening. We could hear that, and the next thing you know, it was thud, thud, and then I think it was splash, thud, and then it was just crashing up, just running up a mountain, crashing through the brush and everything, going up the mountain on the other side of the creek. Now, when it went thud, it went step, 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 splash, step. That means it hit the creek once. That creek was at least 12 feet wide at the time, and that's in like the beginning of July or whatever it was. It was still pretty full. It was running pretty good. So whatever, it took one stride basically to get over that creek. That's insane.
Yeah.
You could feel the vibration of how heavy whatever it was walking away quickly. You could feel it in those rocks. It was heavy. I mean, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds heavy. So, and I always get people who's like a little skeptical with what I say and everything else, because trust me, I am a Wednesday night, Sunday morning church-going creationist from everywhere. And I still get people asking me, like, you really believe in that? And I was like, everything points to it. It pointed to the Philly Apes. It points to the, I can't remember what the name of that creature is. It's out in Africa. But all of these things really do exist. All the science and all the evidence just points to it. So for me, I just tell people, listen, I can't convince you of anything. I can't make you believe me. I can just tell you what I experienced or what I saw or what I noticed. So that's all we can do. So.
Yeah. Well, that the Ellenberry Flats, that area is known nowadays, at least from my perspective, as a kind of a Bigfoot area. The Rogue River area, that's historically a great area for Sasquatch sightings and encounters. You had found those impressions when you were 13, 14. Then you're back there, 20 years later, and you have this encounter.
Not even 3 miles away from that particular location.
Wow. So, you're out there camping. Did the impressions, when you were 13, did those come to mind when you were out there camping, or
Yes, they did. I actually remember because I remember that the incident happened like a night, the second night or something like that we were there. But I remember the day before that, and I mentioned to Mike, I was like, did I ever tell you that one time me and my mom found these weird tracks like just up the road here? He was like, no way. And, I'm like, my friend, I mean, he's, one of them weed-smoking Oregonians. But, he had never experienced anything like that. But he just knew by, what I would, just the way that I was. He was like, man, you really saw those things, huh? And I was like, yeah, man. It's like, this is what we saw. Later on, my mom would even question herself a little bit. She's like, are you sure we saw what we saw? And I was like, can you tell me anything else out there that could make those footprints? I didn't say tracks. I said footprints. And she was just like, not really. I was like, you saw the toes. I saw the toes. Bears don't have toes. Not like that.
What about you guys? You obviously, like you said, you know the local fauna. I'm referring back to this encounter where you guys heard the snorting or breathing or smelling. The bear, cougar, elk, and whatnot out there. I mean, what was going through? I mean, when you heard this and you heard this thing take off, were you scared or frightened? Was your the rest of your party? What was going through their minds? I mean, what were you guys thinking? Did you get up and...
his wife later, like, it was not even, just it was a day or two later. She kind of let us. She was telling her husband that she felt actually uncomfortable from the moment we got there. She felt kind of off. And that first night, she swears she felt like something was kind of watching us and whatnot. And she never said anything because, my buddy Mike, he's kind of a jerk sometimes. And he'd be like, whatever, wherever. Not even mean or anything, but, he was one of those cocky fellows. And I was just, I was the only person that would ever tell him to shut up, and he was just, but she didn't say anything to him until then. But when he actually, he heard the splash and then the crash. He woke up rather quickly too, but he woke up just in time to kind of hear the splash and then crashing through the woods. And we got out of the tent. He grabbed a gun. We had a flashlight. As soon as we got out of that tent and had that flashlight on, the noise stopped. And that's what really freaked him out. Because he was like, what stops like that?
Yeah.
Nothing. Deer would keep running. Bear would keep running. Cougar would keep running. It's just instinctual. It's just what they do. This, whatever it was, stopped.
Yeah.
So,
well, even though you guys didn't see it, it's odd. Is that, I mean, the circumstances, your description of the crossing of the creek. I mean, you automatically go through what you know, and it's not, it eliminates bear, it eliminates, it doesn't sound like a quadrupedal animal. I mean, it sounds like something.
This was literally, and I always tell people this was bipedal. This was step, and it might be a third step or whatever, but anyways, it was step, splash, step, and then, basically running and crashing through the brush and going up the other side of the mountain. The other side of the creek was basically a huge, like, mountainish hill going up. And then it stopped the minute we got out with our flashlights, and he had a gun. I'm sure it didn't see the gun or anything, but it saw the flashlights, I'm sure, and probably heard us all of a sudden. And we stayed in the truck the Forerunner the rest of that night. So
it's funny as how we as humans think that even a tent we feel like is protection from whatever might be outside of it, but you got to think if Bigfoot wanted to get into any of our vehicles, and I drive a Jeep with a soft top, so it'd just be like peeling a can of a sardines if it was that was its intention. So
yeah,
but
might as well be up there with samurai.
So that's interesting that you said your friend's wife had kind of felt uneasy and had that feeling of being watched when you first got there. Did you notice anything like unusual about the area when you got in there? Did you hear the normal wood sounds and that kind of stuff?
I heard normal stuff from what I can remember. I did, but I'm a guy, so and this was 12 years ago or whatever, but 10 years ago. At the time, I'm a guy. I wasn't really paying attention to that. We went up there to do a little bit of gold panning see what we can do for the weekend. It was just a good time for him to drink beer, have fun with the wife and the kid, and for us to kind of hang out as friends and family and whatnot and do some gold panning and whatever. So I didn't really feel anything. Neither did he. It wasn't until that particular incident. It was that. And then we ended up, we jumped into that Forerunner the rest of the night. And we actually thought about leaving, but it was kind of me and Mike that were just like, you know what, I got the gun. I think we're fine. I mean, let's just hang out. You never know. And, we were freaked out, but, at the same time, I wasn't too fearful, but I was scared. I mean, but I didn't do bad, so.
So yeah, you weren't compelled to, and sometimes people are. They are so scared that they get out of the area. But at the time, what did you think that it was? Did you go to Bigfoot at that time?
I went directly to that, and that's just because of the previous find and experience. Back when I was 13. And I even made mention of that evening, and that's kind of why we stuck around. He's like, dude, well, what if it is? Hey, maybe we can get a picture of this stupid little smartphones we have. Actually, there wasn't even really smartphones then as much as they were just flip phones with cameras. But, we might be able to get a shot of this thing, or, I don't know. We were just kind of sticking around just in case. My mind went right to Bigfoot, period. I went right to, and that's why I had a sense of fear, but it wasn't enough to sit there and have me, run to town, in the Forerunner. I'd been out in the woods. I camp out there still. I used to camp out, well, not anymore. I got a family and everything, but even after that for a little while, I'd go out camping by myself, man, do some fishing up a high lake and just camp there in a tent by myself. I don't have that big of a fear of dying. It's just something that happens. Can't avoid it. So, and, not to mention, I do think that we should have a healthy respect and fear for these things. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to stop living my life because there's sharks in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
it seems like, even though you've had these two experiences, one possible encounter, it didn't affect you to the point where I'm never going to wood. But it maybe piqued, your intrigue a little bit. What happened after that date? Where did David Boozer
actually,
go with
I
this?
think you're onto something right there. Maybe I'm not afraid enough because I didn't actually see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I might not have the kind of fear that other people that actually have had. I never thought about that before that way. That's interesting. So.
It was a point I didn't mean to bring up, but now that we're on that subject, that's true though. So it affects everybody differently. When you come across something that's not supposed to be there, you actually see it. It's solidified. You got that picture in your head forever. Whereas, there is, a difference. But, I've talked to, as have you, David, many eyewitnesses, and those that just had this, lifetime hunters, a lot that know, though they didn't see something, they won't go back in the woods because of the experience, something going through the forest like a bulldozer, throwing stuff, grunting, screaming. So I guess it has a different effect depending on the experience and, how much something like this blows your mind. Some people kind of go, oh, I always thought there was something out there, cool. And others go, I didn't think it was real, and wow,
Yeah, I'm sure maybe if I would have actually seen it, I might not have ever gone back to the woods after that fact. From what I hear from people, some people ask me about some of the encounter stories I come across, and I want to explain something real quick about my website and what I do real quick.
Yeah.
So people, I am not some sort of BFRO out here. I'm not going around trying to decipher whether people's encounter stories that they give me are true or false. Mine is actually more or less kind of 40% encounter, 60% entertainment. I'm here to kind of, whenever I had my experiences, my mom had hers, and I had a couple friends that actually had visuals. One time, my mom came to me and one of my buddies came to me and they were like, dude, you know what? Could you create a really cool like story out of my encounter? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I created these little backstories into these encounters, and the next thing you know, my mom comes to me and my buddy, and they're just like, you know what? This really helped us kind of process what we experienced or what we've seen. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, that's kind of a light bulb over the head moment. And so I ended up doing a few more for some other people that had experiences, one out of Washington, two out of California, one out of Washington. Did those, and I got the same response. And so ever since then, I've been taking these basic encounters or visuals or whatever, and all I'm doing is creating the scenery behind them, where they lived, what it looked like there, basically what they do for a living, and why they were where they were. But the encounters, the actual experiences, those are pretty much almost verbatim. And so I take those, record those down, and then write them back, write them out. So that's kind of what I do with my own stuff. And so I've had people from like the FRO stuff and other places come to me going, oh, man, this is just crazy stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not here I'm not here to debate whether or not somebody lies to me or tells me the truth about their encounter. I don't care. All I'm doing is sharing the information out there in a really awesome way, kind of like Native Americans have been doing that forever, creating these awesome storytelling experiences. They're expressing experiences and facts through storytelling. And that's kind of what I wanted to do here, because it really does help not just people out here kind of, get familiar with the whole Bigfoot thing or have something enjoyable or entertaining, but it actually it's been helping people process better what they've experienced. So to be a part of that was kind of awesome. That's why I don't charge anything for I have no content that costs anything.
Right.
So,
David, you bring up a point, because in your blog you mentioned that that when you wrote down your personal experiences, it helped you process it. So, I mean, can you explain that a little bit? I mean, it kind of goes along with what you're saying, but for some of these others.
Yeah, because I mean, even like my like my mom or something, and she would years later kind of like second guess herself. I'm like, did I hear those screams? Did I see those footprints? I had those moments too, and then I decided to write out my little thing and put my story behind it. Except for mine was, I didn't have to create such a background story or stuff out of my imagination because I was there. So when I wrote mine out, it just all made sense, and I was like, you know what? I did experience this.
Yeah.
Did see this. I did hear this. I did notice this, and so. All of a sudden it was like, it was real. And so for me, regardless of the scientific evidence that is out here for it, even regardless of that, there's so much more eyewitness reports. I don't believe everything that comes across my email. I don't. And sometimes, even if I find it a little far-fetching to believe, I'll still write it out because I can, because they sent it. They took their time to do that. Why not? So, so that's just, it really does. I think that's one thing people can do is maybe record their event somehow on video or write it out. Sometimes it really helps us to process things better. Some people use painting. Some people use music. I mean, whatever it is. And some of us, like me, use storytelling. So we do.
Yeah, it's such a great idea, though, to because I remember, having an encounter myself. As time passes, you start to go, did that really happen? And I remember writing down my my experience on paper as well, and I could reflect on that just like as you did, and go, wow, it really did happen, and you can reflect upon that and learn from it, and so that's such a great point, because a lot of people, they bottle up inside, and years later they question it if they if that actually happened.
I think the other reason that so many people do kind of are very weary or skeptical of reports and stories, even mine or yours or anybody else's, is because a lot of time we run across people that they're not willing to kind of let others know who they are. Basically, they want to keep their anonymity with this. I get that. It doesn't make me doubt it anymore at all. It just doesn't. If somebody wants to keep their anonymity, that's fine. Maybe it's because of their job, their position in society, or their community. So far be it from me. I don't need your name. I don't need your address. I'm good.
Right.
If I need your name and address, I'll call up the NSA and get it from them. So
you don't even have to call the NSA. You just say it out loud. That, hey, I'd like to get so-and-so's address. They're already listening.
You're already on.
David, have you found a lot of people? Sorry, Gunnar, go ahead.
Your approach to the subject of Bigfoot is not. You're not going out and doing field investigation. You're kind of a collector of people's experiences, and
I do go out and about. We do go hiking, and we really love to go over to the coast, which, by the way, I'm going to be heading up north at some point. I'd like to this summer and stop by and grab myself a bag in person of some good old tree knots. I live now in Roseburg, and I don't know if you guys know, but there's the Cow Creek Indian tribe and everything else. They actually have some interesting folklore and stories of hairy man, basically. They're stick man, if you will. They're Sasquatch. So, and I actually have a cousin who just moved here. He got out of the military. He did about 4 tours in Afghanistan. He would go out for like a month at a time, and they'd go around crawling into mountains and caves, shoot the enemy, and come back. And so he's like, dude, I'm in. Let's go do this. So actually this summer I was thinking about once in a while, because it's only like 12 miles from me down there to Cow Creek, and, Grandma and Grandpa live about a few miles from Cow Creek. And so getting up there, maybe doing some recording, maybe checking out some stuff, wandering around out there this summer, I'm actually planning on doing. I have a gentleman in Myrtle Creek who has some very interesting finds. I'm trying to get connected with him because he has a cast that he made of a footprint that he has not shown anybody yet. So he actually just got it this last summer. So I would like to kind of go and check that out. And he's a shop owner in town, so we kind of keep the anonymity at he's a shop owner in town. But I'd like to get up there with him. He says he's had tree breaks, some grunts, and a couple screams that he's heard in a certain location, a certain area. And so he wanted to know if me and my cousin would like to go up there and hang out one night and maybe bring some recording equipment, see what we see. But do I get out there all the time? No. I got. I'm the father of 5. We homeschool 4 of them. So,
oh, geez.
Yeah. And my wife won't let me take them out because she thinks that they'll just be food.
But they're all future squatchers.
They're all future squatchers. I'm actually. We're going to start a little entrepreneurial class. I'm going to teach my kids how to use the web, how to do things like blogging and things online to kind of build their own businesses here, do things. The Bigfoot side I did, though, I didn't monetize the content other than, basic AdSense like everybody else, and that's just because it's there to do, so you might as well. But all the content I have is free because it's just something I do. I just love it. It's just passion. I love sharing the stories, and I love the community. But it's been interesting. The YouTube channel has almost 1 million hits in the last 90 days.
Wow.
So it's been pretty powerful, pretty awesome.
Now, have you had
David,
people come and go ahead, Shane. Your turn.
I was going to say, before we skip this part, I want to ask him that, with people reaching out to him, have you found anybody, or do you get a lot of reluctant people, where they kind of step forward and then they step back, or you get a lot of people just willing to lay down their encounter or story?
So far it's been very few as far as the reluctancy is concerned. There's been a few that have been reluctant. There was you got to understand that half of the content that I get, half of the stories that I get from people are secondhand. The other half, or maybe it's even 60-40. 40% are like firsthand. 60% is secondhand. It's from my friend or my cousin. It happened to my aunt or my uncle. They told me this story and they said it was okay to share, whatever. But as far as reluctancy is concerned, very few actually. The rest of them are usually pretty good to share. They don't even mind using a first name. There's been quite a few that said, hey, you can use my whole name, I don't care. Although I don't really like to do that, so I don't want anybody bugged online or anything like that, so I use first names and whatnot. you know how it can be. All of a sudden, there's people with software out there scraping names off of YouTube channels. So you know, so we just use first names and stuff like that. But the reluctancy, not really. There's been a few, and I have to say there was a couple lady down in Oric, California, and her kids had the visual. There was a gentleman that in that same area as a kid with his mom ended up seeing one, and he was a little reluctant at first, but I ended up getting an interview with him on the YouTube channel. And it was really interesting because it was in Oric, and it was actually up the same road that lady lived on. It's just his was down by the beach. So it was pretty interesting. I also have one that was a little reluctant that's coming out here shortly up around, you guys know Frog Lake, right?
Yeah, I just read that one today.
Okay, yeah, that one's there. But I also have somebody who emailed me about their encounter, wanted to do like a little sit-down interview about their experience out at Frog Lake that they've had, and two totally different people that don't know each other.
Wow.
So it was like, well, that's cool. And this was before I even published that. I was like, really? I was like, I got somebody else that had some experience out there. He's all, really? I was like, yeah. Like, man, I'm going to have to like be a dating service for like Bigfooters or something here. I don't know.
Oh, geez, don't get me started. Because I used to be in the BFRO, and at one time there was a lot of question about them. Some of the people that were in there were in there that,
I get a lot of people ask me questions about what I think about like the Finding Bigfoot series and the BFRO. I like the BFRO. I love the sites that have those more kind of police documentation type of files on it. I think it's great. It's not me. I like the more entertainment side of things. I really like that fun while I'm learning this. And as far as Finding Bigfoot is concerned, my good friend William Jebney, he's not a big fan of it, but I am. I like it. Whatever gets this stuff out there. If it's an entertaining way, educational way, a police report file way, I don't care. Either way, I'm such a fan of it that if I could every day, I told my wife I would drink Sasquatch coffee, just because it's Sasquatch. Yeah, but it's I don't mind that stuff at all. I really don't. Except for that killing Bigfoot thing. That's going a little bit too far for me. I think that's a little ridiculous. So
I have never watched that. So yeah, I defend Finding Bigfoot because people complain about the concept and what they do and what but this is a show. First it's entertainment, and it has raised the awareness of the topic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like our generation or this generation's In Search Of. That there's a show on TV about Bigfoot every week. That's cool. There didn't used to be.
I love that. And it seems like, when you get those people that actually like complain about it and are all kind of bent out of shape about it, I usually look at them right in the face on camera and just say, I don't care. I just don't care. You don't like it.
That's very direct. But the thing is that the complaints about, that it is people will be out hoaxing more because of Finding Bigfoot are like, well,
I don't care.
For me, it raised the bar of researchers to be more discerning about their evidence. We need to pay more attention and vet our evidence. What?
The more crazy hoaxers that get out there and do some pretty fabulous hoaxing, all that's going to do is bring the evidence out in even more light. It's going to really stand apart and make people think. Because all of a sudden, you've got something that can't be duplicated. So as far as I'm concerned, bring hoaxers on. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to see, there'll be a point where there won't be Finding Bigfoot anymore, and it will kind of be a bummer, that has ran its course. So, but in the meantime, if you enjoy it, take it for what it is. It's entertainment first, based on Bigfoot.
It is.
So.
It is, and I think, like you said, it brings about awareness in a very entertaining way. It's kind of like me,
Right.
we've got some really awesome platforms out here, like Monster X Radio. We've got, these other different cool shows and whatnot that really kind of bring about awesome information, education, and all this other cool stuff about this whole thing. I mean, the real serious side of everything. And then you've got, platforms like mine, where it's kind of like, taking this whole thing and more of an entertaining way where people can kind of just build that awareness. I feel like my kind of gig is more like a filter. It's like, okay, I bring them in here, they're interested, they really enjoy this, and then all of a sudden they're even more interested and they want to filter through some of the, craziness, and then they start finding their favorite things like, some of William Jevning's books or his show or Monster X Radio. They start finding these things. I think I'm kind of like finding Bigfoot, where it's kind of like a jumping point.
Well, that's
you know
true.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I, as a Bigfooter and a researcher, I like stuff that is entertaining. I read nonfiction Bigfoot books as well as stuff that is science based. So I enjoy your website and reading the stories, and I know that it's basically based on a true story. So it's good stuff. There's still good information in there.
So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be kind of the storyteller that writes things out, and that kind of this is based on a true story. Okay, this is based on a true encounter. Here it is in story format. And so that's what I wanted to do. And then this way, it's that jumping point where it gets people interested who might not have been interested before, and, hey, this is actually kind of cool. I really love this. This would be a great hobby. And then they start jumping into shows like yours, start learning more about people in the community, about, some of this real awesome research out here and everything. And then gives them that kind of, that knowledge base where they can start going out and kind of doing things on their own and diving into the community and whatnot. And so if I'm a diving board for that, I'm awesome with that. I'm good with it.
Well, I appreciate the fact you're very upfront that you are taking that you're expanding the story to fill in details, and that there's some of it is creative writing. And unfortunately, there are other sites and Bigfoot things that put things out there as they were fact with. And they're clearly not. They may be based on a true story, or they may be completely fiction, but they put them out as factual data, and I'm not cool with that. That's why I like Pacwest Bigfoot.
When I put out my website at the very beginning, once I figured out that this was kind of a hit for people and they really liked it, all the things, I made a video on my About page that told people, here is what I do. Half of this stuff right here, the encounter parts of these storylines, are facts. The rest of it, everything around it, is from my own creative side. They're going to say, you know what, I'm from this part of Washington, this is what it's like here, and then I'm going to go out, do a little research, and I'm going to fill in the artsy-fartsy writing part of it. And they're going to give me their encounter. This is what I saw, this is how I felt, this is what happened at this point, and then what I'm going to do is go out and write it out. Mm-hmm. And so, like you said, it's based on a true story. And that's what I wanted to do here. And I made sure that was known. And even from time to time when I'm introducing, getting ready to read back those stories on voiceovers, I do reiterate that fact from time to time, reminding people out here that this is not a place, this is not the BFRO here. If you're looking for the BFRO and you want some sort of, up-to-date reports and whatever, you can go to the BFRO. That is not this. You're in the wrong place for that. This is for Bigfooters and other people to come and enjoy and just have some entertainment time and learn maybe some other things that are happening in their area, whatever. But these are all based on a true story. So you're going to get some good information, but at the same time, you're going to get it in a story format that's entertaining and that you can enjoy. So when you're not Bigfooting and you're just camping and having fun, you can read my stories back to your kids and watch them freak out. So
there you go.
Well,
maybe
a good one.
Maybe they'll behave a little bit better.
Yeah, I can't wait for church camp.
Yeah. Well, a good one. I was on your blog, Pacwest, today, and I was reading the Frog Lake encounter, and I was enthralled. It was an interesting encounter with a great story, and I mean, it made it even more appealing to me because I know Frog Lake well. But it was really well done, and I don't think I'd read that to my daughter because it was a little freaky. But speaking of freaky, is there any particular encounter that you've taken and reported back and made kind of a story out of it that really stuck out in your mind that you found maybe a little frightening or there was something really odd that stuck out?
The encounter up around, like you said, the Elderberry Flats area is actually a pretty hot spot, but I don't think people understand how hot spot all of Southern Oregon is. Southern Oregon has been a hot spot forever. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that whole Yakult, Yakult and up around Mount St. Helens area. This whole area is like that. And some of them, like, first off, the gal that was had her tent dragged down in the Klamath River, that was actually a first-hand account I got from her. That one was pretty freaky. Other one was a second-hand account that I had read, and fortunately a friend of mine got a hold of the dude's brother, a family member, who really did say this really did happen. But it's the one that happened up around Union Creek with the father and his son one Christmas, and they were heading back, got, flat tire or whatever it was, and they were surrounded. And I've been there in those lodges there, in those cabins. And, I mean, I never experienced anything like that, but I've heard it a million times that way. There. And that one was pretty scary. The other one that made me feel really uncomfortable that was a first-hand account was the Oric one. That one had kids involved. The new Oregon Coast one I have out here is also a first-hand account from what is that up there? What town was that again? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Can't believe I'm forgetting it. Anyways, down at the dunes, basically.
Florence.
And the one in Florence, that one in Florence had to do with some kids seeing it. I actually am getting some pictures from them pretty soon about some imprints, some impressions in the ground, look like footprints. But the one in Oric with the thing at the window, man, that one right there was pretty bone-chilling for me. Anytime it has to do, it's very hard. It was actually, to tell you guys the truth, it was kind of hard for me to write those up. I really have this passion for kids, man. When kids are being hurt or things happen bad to kids, I feel like hurting whoever it was that was doing it. I give to children's funds. I dig kids. I have 5 of my own, trust me. So those right there, anytime it has to do with children, I usually actually, to tell you the truth, try to avoid even listening to it. Just because when it comes to the kids, it's just too much for me sometimes. And I've actually, I don't really, I had like 3 other reports of children incidences. I'm not writing them. I'm not dealing with them. I got them, but I just can't. I don't want to. I don't like it. It just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Do you get a lot of those children-related reports or encounters?
There was only I think there's been about 6 or 7 of them. I've only written I think 2. There's others, but it's usually like they're all camping. There was a couple that they were camping, and the kids thought they saw something across the way, and this was at Willow Lake. Now that one I'm probably going to go ahead and write it up because it wasn't really scary by any means, but there was actually a witness that came forward, and I think this was, when was that? It was at Willow Lake. It was in the 80s, maybe, late 80s, who saw, and I used to live up at Willow Lake practically, and they saw Bigfoot up there on one of the peninsulas. But I ended up having a lady and her husband email me not too long ago, about 2 months ago, so maybe even before that, maybe like December or something. But they were there at the time, and they swear their kids said they saw the same thing at the same time. And they also heard later that night they kept hearing some screams in the distance. And they were camping on the far side of one of the inlets there. And I used to go over there and we'd throw like M60s out in the water, tie rocks to them, and then fish up. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I did as a kid. But it was really interesting. But there was a couple other encounters that had to do with kids and some pretty interesting, I guess it's just interesting, just really kind of hair-raising. One of them was in a camper, The kids were in the camper, the folks were down by the lake, the kids were napping, and this thing was there, right outside the camper trying to get in. And I just don't like dealing with that. Can't. So...
Yeah, I mean, I understand. A lot of reports that, there are a lot of reports it seems to reflect that Sasquatch may be attracted to kids. And that could be just because kids are predictable and they're harmless and they laugh and they're, obnoxious at times, and that could be a thing there. But, no, I can appreciate your stance on that. I have a daughter myself, a young daughter, and, I can imagine.
Well,
yeah.
Just so you know, I mean, I don't like to write up stuff, too, that's way far-fetched, I'm not going to be writing up stuff that people send me about Bigfoot drinking beers with Elvis on the moon or them phasing in and out of existence or something. I don't do that. It's a physical creature. Some people sit there and say that this is like some sort of relation to the Gigantopithecus. I think it is the Gigantopithecus. I don't think it ever went totally extinct. So... they can try to compare it to it, but I'll tell you what, I think it is. That's the difference here. As far as I'm concerned, that's what I believe. I believe it is Gigantopithecus.
Got it. There are a lot of theories, and so you lean to Gigantopithecus. Do you think it's I mean, you obviously given this some thought. So, I mean, why have you come to this, possibility?
Wait, say that again? I kind of missed you on that.
Oh, sorry, I said, why have you come to this possibility as it being Gigantopithecus?
If you start thinking about it, some of those like ancient fish that they say have gone extinct for the last millions and millions of years, although that's pretty much impossible for millions of years. But if you really think about the science behind everything, you get past the political correctness and the craziness that we hear around today, and we just get to the scientific, the facts of, the scientific facts behind everything. Those fish are still being caught. We have this thing called something Mbembe, whatever it is, out in Africa. It's like a small little dinosaur-like thing that swims in the water. It's Loch Ness, basically. That's what it is. That's the description of it. And a friend of mine, he runs the Creation Museum. He's a well-known scientist. He's debated Bill Nye the Science Guy and ate the guy for lunch. His name's Ken Ham. He shows actual proof that this thing could exist today. And the thing is, you can use the same exact, time-tested science to say right now, I'm pretty positive that Gigantopithecus is not extinct. That it exists today and exists in the form and in the animal or creature that is known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. The billy ape, for crying out loud. I think it's like 3 times taller than a regular chimp and walks around on 2 legs half the time. So they were supposed to be something of myth, but here they are nonetheless. So, I'm not going to count just because somebody gives me a jaw of something and tells me it went extinct when we have all these reports. You know what? Maybe it didn't. maybe the Gigantopithecus just moved like people. We just dispersed. So that's just what I believe. I don't, we see these pictures of Gigantopithecus, but you got to, or these big statues of them and everything else, but you got to remember that when they put those things together, all they used was a jaw. So they got the rest of this creature from one jaw. I think they probably looked a little bit different. I think they more or less look like Patty, the Patty film. That kind of Bigfoot, more than it looked like some sort of giant apish orangutan-looking thing. So, that's kind of my opinion on that. But I always tell people to follow science and leave the everything else out of it. Science always, the facts lead to the facts, and the facts lead to the truth. And even if you don't like the truth, it doesn't matter, because it's just the truth. And so I don't believe the Gigantopithecus today. I think it still exists and exists in the animal we know as Bigfoot.
It got quiet. Shane, are you still there? One of the... I'm telling you, I'm going to start writing children's Bigfoot books. My kid's got one. It's awesome, man. He loves it. Yeah. Well, on your blog, there's a quote that says, the more I seek answers through science, real science, and through people and their own unique stories, I can see what the natural world and creation can accommodate. What do you mean by that? Well, it's kind of like when people come to me with some pretty crazy things like, Bigfoot was, is half man, half ape. Well, first and foremost, there's no such thing as a transitional species out here. There's nothing out here that shows cat dog. Ever. As a matter of fact, protein inhibitors within our genes does not allow for that. In our DNA does not allow for that. You can't transition from one species to another. So for me, it's like when you follow science. So when you're telling me that first it was an orangutan, then it was a Gigantopithecus, then it was Bigfoot. I'm just telling you that Gigantopithecus was always Gigantopithecus, and it still is Gigantopithecus. We just call it Bigfoot or Sasquatch, mouse devil. That's just kind of I get all kinds of crazy questions sometimes because I am a believer. I'm a faith-based guy, and people are like, well, I'd get all those stupid animals on that ark, and I was like, 95% of the animals on this planet that are air breathing are smaller than a house cat. It was easy with a room to spare. So, Shane, I'll let you take that next question because that segues right into one of our questions.
Well, it does. But sorry, blog talk, acting up. I was speaking and no one was hearing me. But I was going to get back to Gigantopithecus, actually, because I have to. For me personally, I know Sasquatch exists. I know it's there. I just don't know what it is. So that's an open question for me personally. I have to leave the option of Giganto. But I could also think, I've always thought, my line of reasoning is they're finding new creatures every day that, have gone extinct. And many different types of fossils are being found around the world. There's no reason a primate couldn't could have been in the Americas for a long time and still here. That maybe it's not a Giganto. Maybe it's a cousin of Giganto. Maybe it's something else unique. But it's very possible, that it is Giganto. And as you were describing earlier, their whole concept of Gigantopithecus is based off a mandible, a jaw, and some teeth. And then they create this huge creature that may be completely wrong. They've done it with dinosaurs.
Well, they did it with human beings. Whenever they sat there and did the man and the young boy out there in France, when they claimed that they had those cavemen-like guys. they basically took these skulls and the missing parts of the skulls, and they filled them full of dental putty, right, in the shape that they wanted them to be. Not the way that they are supposed to be, but the way that they wanted them to be, and made them look like some sort of Cro-Magnon man. But if you do the actual testing of the skull and what they had, they were human beings just like me and you. Same exact. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, well, you know, I don't have a Cro-Magnon look. I mean, maybe some guys do, but, you know, whatever. It doesn't make them Cro-Magnon.
I think to Shane's point, I think we do have an incomplete fossil record. You know, I think that's we discover new species are being discovered all the time, and I agree with you, David, that there's no change in kind or a transitional species. You don't have a bird go to that's a whole nother show. Yeah, it is. I believe in adaptation. I don't believe, So I think that animals have adapted to their environment, but not went from a fish to a cat to a dog, right?
and you hear, however, there's natives in Alaska, and this is kind of interesting. Natives in Alaska that say that they followed the hairy man to that particular part of the world. Okay, so the hairy man follows these rivers and waterways and everything else, and the natives went with them as well, or it was vice versa, one of the two. Anyways, this is what we hear. Now, during that dispersion, which happens in Genesis chapter 9, which is what every historian goes back to, whether they believe in the Bible or not, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the dispersion of human beings across the planet. But at the same time, certain things move. Dogs move, cats move, things move, animals move. And the next thing you know, why not Gigantopithecus move as well? And maybe it did kind of adapt to the different types of environment. You know, up here, it became a little more hairy. It became maybe not as tall or bigger. Maybe it weighs a little bit more than it used to, because now it has a rich, you know, food base of deer and elk and beaver and whatever. So, you know, but why can't it still be Gigantopithecus? Why does Gigantopithecus have to be, gone with all these reports?
You make a good point about the adaptation, because, you know, if you look at gorillas, for example, based on the region, you know, you have lowland, river, blah, blah, blah. There's, you know, usually a 30 to 40% difference in size in some of these different gorillas, just based on the region that they're in. No reason that, you know, some of these Sasquatch reports in the United States, you know, you got the Pacific Northwest, and then you got, you know, reports from, you know, back east and Florida area, you know, that range in size and colors. No, you know, for me, it's not rocket science. It's, adapting to your environment. Yeah,
it's adapting to your environment. It's just like human beings. We are one race. It's not the black race. It's not the Asian race. It's not the white race. It's the human race. The reason people are black or lighter brown or lighter shades or white is because of regional things. It's environmental. It's where they're from that causes certain pigmentation, adaptation, things like that. I get that. I think the same thing happened here. You know, you might be corn-fed and deer-fed out there in the Midwest, and over here you got elk and deer and goat and whatever, you know. It might be bigger and heavier and hairier. And while in the Midwest, you ever notice that sometimes you hear they talk about them being a little bit taller and lankier, you know, a little thin. And, you know, well, that's what happens when you eat corn, I guess, but still.
Yeah, well, especially Roundup Ready corn. It's not that great for you.
Green corn. Whoever thought about that, man? That's now there's a show to do.
Right.
As far as myself is concerned, getting out there, I am going to be getting out there a little bit more this summer, and I'm going to start doing that myself and kind of add stuff into my own Facebook page and whatnot, and sharing out any sort of, you know, evidence and experiences that I have, you know, That's kind of the future. And Pacwest Bigfoot is just going to kind of stay what it is. People sending in their encounters or encounters of people that they know, and I'm just going to create those nice, awesome, here's a based on a true story account. So, I'm going to keep doing that because I really enjoy it. I love it. Fun. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's nice getting to know all these people.
And I really enjoy Pacwest Bigfoot. I really do. I enjoy it for its content, for its your storytelling, and for the encounters. I plan on delving more into them because you got quite a few up now. Both I can read it or listen to them. But have you noticed personally, David, any sort of patterns, or maybe not patterns is the wrong word. Have you noticed any consistency with some of these reports you're getting in or stories?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Sometimes people will be like, hey, this stuff is written by the same writer. You can tell. And I was like, well, yeah, duh, it was me being dumb. Now, as far as the writing is concerned, yes, it's going to be my writing. But the encounters, if you beat into them, I know that's a good one. I actually had to say that to a few people once. I was just like, duh. Yeah. I was like, good. Living. Basically, though, if you look at the encounters and the actual experiences, so when you're reading through my stuff or listening to me or whatever on the channel, and I get to the point where it's like all encounter in the experience, I've noticed that these things, there are some people out here that, believe they have some sort of benevolent quality, that they are kind of like some sort of mystical being of some kind. And, if you want to believe that, I'm fine with that. I don't believe it, but if you want to, I'm good with that. For the most part, the encounters that I get are either there's some sort of like indifference, like not like total indifference, but like, hey, this is my territory, you need to leave. I don't like you here. Or it's actually a bad experience where it's like these things are kind of aggressive. And I believe it's because it's a wild, flipping animal. It's an animal. It is.
Yeah.
What? You can be Jane go
coming around.
I think that it is totally possible, and I'm going to throw this out there because I totally believe it. I believe that if you're Jane Goodall and you wanted to go out here and befriend a little family of Bigfoot, I think that it's a possibility that you would be able to do that if you could. Okay? I get that because she did it with these giant gorillas. Why can't you do it with, another type of apish animal? I don't see why not. However, you got to remember that these things they have instinct. They are wild. These are, and like gorillas and like chimpanzees and like the billy ape and everything else, they're highly intelligent. They're probably one of the most highly intelligent species on this planet. And if it were not so, we would have found them, and we'd have dead ones right now. Mm-hmm. But these things are so intelligent, they're very evasive. The billy ape had been evasive from white folks for how long? 100 years since we started hearing stories of them. And yet we didn't find any till when? The late 90s, early 2000s? When was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, is there a huge population here? I don't think it's huge, but I think it's bigger than we think.
Mm-hmm.
I think there could be a couple thousand sitting around the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I think that'd be a reasonable number. I don't think they're in the hundreds of thousands or anything like that. Definitely not. But I think they are rare, but yet, and nomadic. I think that's why they're seen from place to place. But I think, generally do avoid people as much as possible.
I think they're nomadic. I think you hit that that nail right on the head. Most people believe that they might sort of like, basically migrate from one breed to another. I don't know if they do that as much as they are just nomadic, where they kind of follow their own kind of wild instincts of, I'm going here now. I'm going here. I'm going to stay here for a while. I think they're kind of nomadic. I do believe that they probably stay within regions, like here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't think you're going to find the same one out in Indiana.
Right.
You know.
Right. They don't
Great
go.
white.
They don't vacation in Florida. The Oregon ones
Yeah.
or the ones from New York don't vacation in Florida. I think they follow the food source. I mean, that's, you know,
I think so too.
it makes sense that a predator that large would not expend, you know, energy not without purpose, that they would be following. They're going to need a lot of food. I mean, if
they are.
Yeah, if you go by, you know, the size and that also limits the population, is that there's only, you know, you can't have 100 Bigfoot in a small area that isn't supported by the food and the habitat. So,
Yeah, no, you wouldn't have any deer left in say 30 days. They'd all be gone.
Right. Well, and the thing is, it's you know, a large number of Bigfoot in a certain area would leave so much sign that it'd be impossible for them to evade humans if even if they wanted to.
Yeah. So I mean, you find something like, you know, something like up around, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with, like, you know, Hyatt Lake, Howard Prairie, and all of that. I mean, having something like, you know, 8 to 10 Bigfoot being up in that kind of area around there to Mount McLaughlin, I don't see why not. That's plenty of space for that many to you know, habituate for a while and to roam around it and feed them until things move on. So, you know,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, travel from elevation to elevation, and from, you know, I mean, I would imagine Sasquatch could get around pretty dang quickly if need be. I know one thing I often think about, David, is, you know, you get a lot of these, I wouldn't say a lot of these, some of the best vocals are heard, you know, during certain times of year, are recorded, you know, they're you know, good vocals or Sasquatch supposed vocals are fairly rare, and I have to assume that, you know, possibly, you know, you're dealing with individuals that come into the same territory, or it's mating season or something, and that's why we get some of these really good vocals sometimes. I mean, what are your thoughts on, you know, I mean, we're just talking about, you know, groups, you know, and I do personally think that Sasquatch, you know, at times may be in a family group or a sort of situation similar to primates, apes. But do you believe in, like, you know, like with what happened with you and, you know, some years ago, where you had something come into your area? I mean, was that a solo individual? Do you think that's possible?
I think that one was just kind of a loner, one of those kind of like a rogue kind of thing. What was he or she there for? You know, could have been curiosity as far as I'm concerned. We also had food laying out, so who knows? That was pretty stupid of us. But at the same time, you know, I guess I would say that I kind of believe what you believe. I'm thinking more or less when we hear and get more vocalizations during a certain, you know, period of 3 or 4 months during a year in a given season. I'm thinking more or less mating. I do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the best answer, because you got to remember that you're not talking about a huge population, but a bigger population than what I think most of us believe. But then again, they got to create a population. So I think this is whenever they're locating each other and finding each other, and this is when you start seeing people going, oh, I noticed these footprints. Or you ever notice that it's kind of like usually around late spring through summer that you find a lot of stuff, and maybe early fall, and a lot of people find, you know, have vocalizations, and they have a lot of footprints, but people are out and about, they're camping, they're doing things, and at the same time, so are all animals. All animals between that time are meeting and storing up and eating and getting fat, and what do you think they're doing? Same thing. And so, you know, I think we find that, especially the vocalizations, I think it's mating calls. It's attracting that. The only other thing that I think it can be from time to time is a warning. For warning.
Yeah, well, there's some there's some clear vocalizations that are territorial. I mean, some of the things that people describe, it sounds like it could be nothing but, like, get out of where I'm at, right? I mean, that's when people are being yelled at from close proximity.
I think those are the only reasons that something can be found. And that's why they're so stealthy. That's why we don't find them or anything like that, because they don't go around, smacking their gums all day long like we would trying to hunt, talking to each other. These things
that's
quiet.
Interesting. Yeah. No, it's interesting that you're talking about them, because one of the aspects or the techniques on finding Bigfoot is to vocalize. And I've always thought that's funny because, that's something that's perpetuated through the BFRO. People go out and do calls and sometimes you do get responses. But I've always wondered, like, okay, if Bigfoot believes that that's another Bigfoot, what do they think we're saying? And I'm concerned that they think that we're saying, "Hey, big fella."
When I see that stuff on Finding Bigfoot, when they're doing like goofy like nightstick glow dancing with babies crying, I think to myself, that's entertainment. Okay, that's like
although it addresses entertainment.
Yeah, that's like me. That's like me creating the backstory to the encounter stories I have. That's kind of that. I don't think these things. Even when they make those calls or we whistle or whatever, I think they know. They know that it's not their kind. But here's the thing. I think they can be pretty curious. And curious in a way that I think has to do with, like you said, territorial. Okay, what's over there, I need to get it out of here. Whatever it is needs to leave now. And so, they might have young, they might be feeding. One of the most interesting encounters I've ever heard was the dad and kids that were backed down all the way to their car by a Bigfoot who was 10 feet in front of them.
Was that over in the Clackamas area?
Clackamas River. Yeah.
Yeah, and the dad had a fishing pole.
He had a fishing pole. Now, here's the deal on that one. Yeah. I got that story from a family member, and the family member actually, the father made a report about that to some Sasquatch guys up there in the Clackamas Escada area years ago, and it was rather interesting. It's like it wasn't going to hurt them. He said it made it feel like that. It's like, you need to leave, or I will eat you. You need to leave. You need to.
Right.
Well, part of that story, there was juveniles there along the river behind, so it was almost like maybe protecting, like, okay, you've gotten too close.
Because it kept looking back over its shoulder, and it kept looking, and it kept looking. Every few minutes, it would glance over its shoulder, even in a very subtle way, and it just kept walking them back. Those encounters like that, I find them extremely interesting. While I still find them kind of out there, like, wow, I wonder if that really did happen.
Mm-hmm.
I can see it. There's a part of me that says, if this did happen to them, I can see that happening. I can see that thing backing them down slowly to get them out of there. So maybe they thought that the pole in the hand was some sort of weapon, a gun, or something like that they might be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
a bluff walk, not a bluff charge, a bluff walk.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Walk.
I mean, yeah. Other known animals, that are that we already know exist or have been proven to exist, have that behavior. They are protective of their young. So that doesn't, and I like the stories where there's where we see behavior. The running across the road stories are very common. As like, why did the Bigfoot cross the road? After a while, you don't learn too much more out of that. It's transitory. They're moving, But seeing like that kind of story is so unique, and the stories, Shane's story has some interesting elements that, to me, imply territorial why did this animal act this way? Why was it its behavior has a reason, and it's and a lot of that seemed to be intimidation. You're in an area that I don't want you to be in. Get out.
Yeah, even animals that run on instinct still have reason. They still do things for a purpose. Everything is purposeful.
Right.
When they go from here to there, it's for a reason. So everything. The only thing the only living creature on this planet that sometimes does things for no apparent reason.
It's human.
Yeah, why do we sit around and watch Frasier all day on Netflix? We have no idea why. I do, by the way.
It's to conserve energy.
That's to conserve energy.
You don't usually sit and binge watch TV without, storing up on carbohydrates and stuff. So.
Yeah, really. So yeah, no, I have my own experiences. I've seen some evidence that has told me, that the possibility of something like that out here to be real. That these encounters that I hear from people shouldn't just be shunned and tossed to the side. That every one of them has a right to be heard, should be heard, and peeled through. I'm not going to be peeling through them to find out if they're true or not, but I really do like to hear them, whether or not, either way, because if it really does sound like something real and awesome, you can learn something from it almost every time. So
and you're not without any filter of, like you said, the too fantastical story of Bigfoot flying in on a unicorn is not going to you're not going to see that on Pacwest Bigfoot. There is a little bit of a filter of,
you have to think. Yeah, I mean, I've had some pretty fantastical stuff being sent my way, and I never expected to get this kind of. I never expected this kind of reception, I guess you would say. Almost 1 million views on YouTube. My site got shut down because I overused my server space. I flew the server. There was 40,000 hits by noon. It was crazy, and I never really expected that. But then again, I really am picky, man. You guys, I am really picky about what I put on here. I've heard some pretty fantastical stuff of people going, I hang out with Bigfoot every day at my house in the mountain. The other day I invited it over for barbecue and sat it there, and it ate right next to me.
Right.
Yeah, I would let the Oregon weed go on that one. Quit smoking it because you got some issues.
I'm right. So.
I'm pretty blunt on my side about things. I can be pretty blunt in my own interviews and stuff like that. I don't want to. I really enjoy the entertainment value that it brings to people in the community as well. Like you guys, just enjoying it for what it is. Hey, what happened? That'd be kind of awesome because this is what they said happened. That's awesome for me. It's kind of entertainment and, seeing what else is happening out here. That's really it. I don't mean for it, and I don't want to mean for it to be anything else. Yeah, I don't want it to be. This is not come and, sit down, let's really go through the evidence and everything else. I leave that to, smarter people than me, like you guys and Williams, and others kind of fit through and really filter through that kind of information. I didn't want to do that because I didn't have the time. Working online already, developing. Yeah, so if you guys ever want a really cool website, let me know. I do that stuff.
And you can find David is actually a web guy. He does websites and
I have
go ahead.
And I have davidboozer.com as an internet marketing consultant. I've actually consulted for 3 Fortune 500 companies. I also started a new one where I'm teaching people how to blog and use blogs called blogbythesea.com. and it's brand new, and it's already had hundreds of hits over the last 3 weeks. So it's been pretty awesome, and it's kind of where I want to go with my life. Eventually, the only thing that I will be online is Pacwest Bigfoot and Blogway. So that's kind of where I want to go my life. The rest of my life, I'm 45 now, so I'm like, oh, what do I want to do with my life? I finally hit it at that crossroads when I'm 45.
Well, David, we're running up against the clock. So I want to say the hour and a half zoomed by. We appreciated you joining us and enjoyed chatting with you. Folks, if you want to find out, like I said, more about David and Pacwest Bigfoot, the links are on the Monster X page, and please go and enjoy the stories that David is putting out there based on true stories. So for my co-host Shane Corson, this is Gunnar Monson. Thank you again for listening to Monster X Radio, and we will catch you next week. Have a great week until then. Squatch out.
Thank you for joining Monster X Radio.
Welcome to Staples.
Staples guy, I just got to town and I need a presentation printed for a big meeting tomorrow.
Well, Staples has everything you need to print, scan, and fax.
Great. Oh, just got a text. The home office made changes to the presentation.
No problem. You can access your files from a USB, email, or the cloud.
And the meeting isn't tomorrow, now it's today.
Our machines are self-service, so there's no waiting.
And it's not here. Now it's in Ebensburg.
I hear it's lovely this time of year.
Print, scan, fax, and copy at Staples, your office away from home.